Okay, amazing. Let's get started. So, again, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Becky, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Airtable. I'm joined by my teammate, Jacob, who's on our product team, and we'll be answering all of your questions in real time over in the Questions tab. I've been at Airtable for over a year, and I help our customers understand what Airtable is and how they can leverage it. So I'm super excited to be here with you all today. And in terms of questions, again, Jacob will be answering them in the Questions tab, so make sure that you familiarize yourself with that section over to the right of the screen share. And if you're interested in a recording, look out for an email from us after the webinar. So as you all know, today we'll be covering what is Airtable and how you can get started. We'll be walking through the 3 steps we recommend you taking in order to really to ensure that you're customizing it for your team. We'll also be, of course, walking through additional resources. So the first thing first, and sorry, just give me a second. Okay, great. So first things first is, what is Airtable? Essentially, Airtable is a flexible, collaborative database that you can customize to your needs. As you can see here in the GIF to the right, you'll notice that in addition to just your standard grid view, we also have gallery views, kanban views, calendar views, as well as a form. So essentially, there are so many different ways for you to make use of the information that you and your team need to track. With Airtable, you have these building blocks like these custom views to organize and manage and create your way. If you need any inspiration on how to get started, you can feel free to check out airtable.com/templates, which includes some of the templates that our team has put together for a variety of use cases. If you go to this landing page, you'll notice that on the left-hand side there are a variety of categories, as well as up here as well. So definitely feel free to take a look and browse and see what folks are using Airtable for. We also have airtable.com/universe, which includes templates that our users have actually opted into sharing. So you'll notice here there are some brands such as Colohan, Twilio, Britannica, Insomniac Events. These are all customers of Airtable who want to share what they've built with Airtable with the wider Airtable community. So whether your team produces content for companies' blogs, social media platforms, or all of the above, you'll notice from templates and universe that Airtable is super flexible and that we can make sure that you are customizing a hub unique to your process. So instead of working in silos across different docs, calendars, and emails, today we'll be walking you through how you can create a single source of truth that works for your entire team in Airtable. Before we start walking through the actual steps to take to customize your base, I also wanted to walk you through just some of the possibilities that are out there. So with Airtable, you'll first be introduced with your base, which is short for database. You'll notice that you can include information in what looks like a spreadsheet, which is what we call the grid view. And you can house information such as your campaigns, your tasks, your content, as well as your team members, all directly within the same base. Within each table, you can create different views, such as calendar views to manage all your launch dates, as well as a gallery view to manage all of your assets. And of course, move your content along with a kanban and simply drag and drop your campaigns across different stages to make sure they're reflecting the latest updates. You can even create a form to collect ideas from your wider team and other stakeholders. After all your information is captured within your base, you can even create more insights, reports to continue to make informed decisions, such as being able to see what projects are happening at the same time, what categories of projects your team is working on and where their status is, and even dynamically produce reports and charts. So once you have your base set up, you'll notice that as a content marketing team, it'll live in a workspace that your team owns. So for example, we'll dive into soon a table air specific workspace, which is a foldering unit. You can upgrade your workspace's plan, you can invite workspace collaborators, and your workspace will live in your home screen. So your home screen essentially holds all your workspaces and of course your bases, again, short for database, but you also have all the learning resources to your left. So over here on the left, you'll have a guide to Airtable, you have video tutorials, as well as, of course, our support articles living in our Help Center. Now, to customize your bases, it's important to know that there are 3 major steps that we recommend going through as a team in order to understand how to best customize your base. The first is to actually, let's go ahead and present here. The first is to actually assess your needs. The second is understand what your needs are, so then you can actually design your base the way that you would need it to look as a team. Last but not least, we'll go ahead and actually build the base so that you can actually go ahead and get started with managing your process directly in Airtable. So the first step is to assess your needs. Before we start designing and building our base, it's very important to take the step back and understand what your team needs to see in this tracker. Here are some really useful questions to answer as a team. What is the goal or function of your team? What types of content does your team produce? What are the different stages of your process? And who are the different team members at each stage? And last but not least, what are some of the hopes and dreams that each team member has for an ideal tool? Airtable is so customizable and flexible that it's very likely that a lot of these hopes and dreams can actually be answered within Airtable itself. For today's webinar, we'll be walking through an example company called TableAir, a brand new company that produces self-assembling tables. And let's say that their marketing team has assessed their goals. In fact, they've answered those questions that we had just presented earlier in the slide before. So let's say that their goal is to launch campaigns to raise brand awareness for this brand new self-assembling table. And let's say that for their content that they're producing, they're mostly focusing on copy and visuals for a variety of marketing channels. And let's say that the stages that their content goes through includes idea, in progress, under review, finalize, and deliver. Short and sweet. The team that's working on this team includes, of course, 2 in-house marketing managers, but also a really fantastic pool of freelancers. And some hopes and dreams that they're hoping to include in their process is to also include task management. So in addition to just launching campaigns and having campaign start and end date, really keeping track of all the different milestones, all the different tasks that will help them get from an idea all the way to delivery. With this context in mind, we can start thinking about how to actually include this information in your base, therefore designing your base. So when we think about designing your base, we recommend actually mapping out what you're tracking and the relationships between the tracked information, because this will inform how you're actually building and setting up your Airtable base. So in our case here for TableAir, we'll notice that they want to keep track of campaigns, they want to keep track of various tasks that fall under each campaign, and they also have different team members working on each of these tasks. So we'll want to map out these relationships and show what's related to what. So in this case, our campaign for the brand launch for TableAir will be related to confirming, will be associated with 2 tasks, including confirming copy and confirming visuals. And I'm sure there are a lot more tasks, but we'll just focus on these 2 for now. And for each one of these tasks, there will be 2 team members working on it. So there will be Jacob, as well as a freelancer, and myself, as well as another freelancer. So once we've outlined what we're hoping to track, we can now actually map it against what it would look like in Airtable. And this is what we would recommend setting it up as, where each one of these layers, campaigns, task, and team, they would each get their own table, and these would actually, the gray areas here would actually live within each of these tables, because in Airtable, you can actually map these relationships. So while they're living in separate tables, we can definitely create these associations and relationships between the campaigns and the tasks and the team members. So now that we know what we're hoping to track, we can start actually mapping this out in Airtable. Let's dive into Airtable again. Great. So as I mentioned earlier, we are now in TableAir's workspace. I created an example of TableAir's marketing base for you all, which we'll walk through in just a moment as well, in order to walk through some of the more advanced functionality. But as we're all getting started, I figured it'd be great if we could actually build a base from scratch together. So when you first add a base, you'll see that you have 3 options. You can start from a template, you can import a spreadsheet, and you can also start from scratch. For today, let's first start from scratch. So let's say we're creating a brand new TableAir marketing base. And pro tip, you can add emojis in almost everywhere in Airtable. So you can go ahead and let's say we want to add a light bulb. It will now become the fave icon for this base as well. And when you first create your brand new base, you'll notice it looks very similar to what a spreadsheet looks like. This is great because it'll allow you to add the information that you're familiar with. But the really important thing to notice about Airtable is that in addition to just adding information in a spreadsheet-like interface, you also have the ability to create different views. So in addition to the grid view, you also have the form view, the calendar view, gallery view, and kanban view. Let's start by just adding some of our campaigns that we are hoping to launch this year for TableAir. We'll first want to name our table campaigns. We'll also want to name our second table as tasks. And then last but not least, our team. So this is exactly mapping to what we had outlined earlier here, campaign, tasks, and team. Now we can go back to our campaigns table and actually list out some of the campaigns and the various details. So let's say that this field includes our campaign name. We can go ahead and add it here. So let's say the launch. Maybe we want to promote spring colors. And last but not least, we want to promote how our tables are also made out of very sustainable materials. Now, after adding our campaign name, we can also add details like our campaign launch date. What we can do with Airtable is actually customize the content of our fields to hold a particular type of information. So in this case, we can choose a date field for our launch date, which will ensure that anytime we click any cell in this field, we'll only be allowed to add a date. And this is great because you can actually standardize your information and ensure that every single team member is on the same page in terms of what they should be including in this particular field. You can also add attachments. So this is also really powerful because you can simply drag and drop from your desktop, or you can pull in from any of these sources here to ensure that your team is exactly on the same page regarding which key art you're using for each campaign. So I'll go ahead and drag a TableAir logo for our launch campaign from my desktop, and you'll also see that it's populating right now. And let's say that we also have another logo here for our spring color campaign. And let's say it's the same for sustainable materials as well. In addition to adding dates, attachments, another really powerful field is our single select field type. So this is great whenever you want to assign an owner or an assignee to a particular campaign or project or a task. In this case, you could create, for example, their names here. You could add my name, Jacob's name, or you also have the option, if they've already been invited to the base to work with you, you can add them as a collaborator as well. So you have 2 options here. You can also, when you add them as a collaborator, you can also notify them as soon as they've been added, and of course, add multiple if you need. To add Jacob, I can go ahead and add him through the share dialog here, or I could add him just by typing his email address here. Oops. There he is. He's already been added. So that's great because now I have two options in terms of how I want to add the owner. Let's say I go with a collaborator field so that Jacob and myself can get notifications as soon as I've been added. I also have the opportunity to use single select field type to choose the stages that my campaigns go through. So as I mentioned earlier, Table Air covers the various stages, including idea. I can just go back to also what Table Air has shared with me. Idea, in progress, under review, finalize, and deliver. In progress, under review, finalized, and delivered. So in addition to adding the custom stages that my campaigns go through, I can also add colors to make sure that they're visually distinct from each other. So let's say the idea is yellow, in progress is blue, under review is pink, finalized is purple, and delivered is green. I can now see that in my drop-down menu for all of the cells here, that I can have all of those options presented in the way that I've customized it. So it can be completely unique to the various processes or stages that your team goes through, and allows your team to really map it against what you actually all do. So let's say that launch is already delivered. Let's say that Spring Colors is already finalized and Sustainable Materials is under review. If you have any questions so far, feel free to jot them down in the questions tab. Great. So it looks like everyone is feeling good about it so far, which is great. I think the next step for us is, of course, is to walk through views, one of the most powerful features about Airtable. So with views, what's really great about it is that, of course, we can name them. So this can be all campaigns, but we can also create additional views that are reflecting the same information captured in that table, but with custom filters, groups, and other ways to display the information in the way that you need. So let's say that I'm looking for a way to just capture the campaigns that I'm working on. I can go ahead and create a new view called Becky's Campaigns, filter for where owner is Becky, and immediately see only my projects remain in my view. However, all campaigns are still in other views because essentially a table holds the same information and views are just different ways of looking at it. So let's say that launch campaign, rather than launching the 5th, we decided to push it back earlier. It's now launching on the 29th. You'll notice that all campaigns will also reflect that same change for launch campaigns, even though I made that change in a different view. So this is really powerful in ensuring that your entire team stays on the same page, and there's always a single source of truth whenever there are changes made, and all the changes are captured in real time. If you have a pro plan or a pro trial, you can even customize your view so that it's personal. A personal view means that only you can customize the way that your view is arranged. And essentially, only you can toggle all of these settings here in the view customization bar. Other folks will still be able to see that you have a view created dedicated to your campaigns, but they will not be able to customize the filters, the groups, sorts, coloring, etc. In addition to the grid view, we also have 4 other views. I'll walk through these 3 first, calendar, gallery, and kanban, because they're also really powerful as reference views. So the calendar view is great whenever you want to keep track of important deadlines. So let's say that you want to make sure that you understand when campaigns are launching. You can go ahead and actually plot the existing date fields that you had added in your grid view directly onto a calendar. And now you'll notice that launch is now on the 29th, as we had added in the grid view, and Spring Colors Sustainable Materials are now on the 19th and 26th. In addition to plotting the dates, you can also color code it by choosing, for example, the stages to color code it by, or setting your own conditions directly for this particular view. In addition to creating a new view for your collaborators to edit, you can also ensure that, for example, here, Spring Colors, they're not just viewing the information, but they can also drag and drop and adjust the dates if they need it. So let's say that Spring Colors moved from 19th to 17th. We can now go ahead and see that when we expand Spring Colors, all those details about Spring Colors as captured here, such as their launch date, their owner, stages, etc., all the same information that we had in the grid view. And we also have the ability to also communicate with each other about this particular campaign. So you can see here, we can see who made what change and when. This allows us to see the revision history for this particular campaign. We also have the ability to mention our teammates. Now Jacob will receive a notification on his mobile phone if he has push notifications enabled. He'll also get an email, and he'll also get an in-app notification in the top right-hand corner at this bell here. Similarly, you can also see that expanded view here in the grid as well. So you can see all the details about launch, all the details about spring colors, as well as that comment I made in the gallery view. Essentially, records live across all views, and all the revision history and comments are tied to the record. You can also create a gallery view, which allows you to ensure that any sort of visual assets, visual types of information can be in the foreground here. So you can see that you can customize a card, so that includes the key art. You can crop or fit it into this particular card. You can also choose to display as much or as little information as you want. If you expand any of these cards, you'll see again the expanded version of each campaign. You'll also have a kanban view, which allows you to see your different cards grouped by a different category. So you can group it by the owner, you can group it by the stages. If you're used to programs like Trello, you can group your campaigns by stages, so you can also keep moving your campaigns along the pipeline accordingly. Similar to gallery view, you can customize the cards to display as much or as little information as you need. You can also have no cover field here, so you can just have the text of which project is where. So let's say that sustainable materials moves from under review to finalized. You can simply just drag and drop it over here to ensure that sustainable materials statuses gets updated immediately. So as you can see here, sustainable materials gets updated to the correct stage. Last but not least, we also have a form view, which allows you to actually collect information in the structured way that you have outlined in your base, in your table. So what you're seeing here is the ability to customize your form. So let's say that it's campaign ideas, and you're collecting different ideas from different stakeholders. You can change the name of your form, which will reflect here in the name of your view. You can also add a cover image, a logo, as well as a description for this particular form. What you're sourcing, who to contact if they have any questions. And now the most important part is that you actually see that all the fields that you had included in your grid view and all your other views automatically get populated into your form, allowing you to ensure that you're collecting information in the structured way that you've designed it to. Best part is that you can also drag and drop fields from the form builder. So let's say that stages and owner are details that an external stakeholder wouldn't include in an idea. You would just, for example, want to collect tentative campaign name, tentative launch date, as well as potentially reference materials. And now you could go ahead and make each one of these fields required if you needed to as well. When you are ready to share the form, you can go ahead and share it by just clicking preview. And you'll now see that each form has its own designated URL, and you can go ahead and collect campaign ideas here. So let's say that we also have a campaign idea for a new event. Maybe we want to highlight how table air is very sustainable, and we want to talk all about upcycling. We could have an upcycling market where we work with other partners to really highlight the differences that upcycling can make and the differences that upcycling products already make. We could then submit that form and see it automatically populate in our all campaigns table under upcycling market, and launch date being the 29th, as we had just selected. Now, as your team is collecting all these campaign ideas, you can go ahead and start assigning it to your teammates and start working on it, including adding tasks. If you have any questions so far, feel free to add your add your questions to the questions tab. I see a question from Shane here regarding adding a date range. That's definitely possible. So what I can do here is just actually adding start date as a new date field, and adding the start date. Let's say they all start on the 1st of March. I could now actually go back to my calendar, and instead of just using one single date, I can use start date as well as launch date, and I would get the entire date range on our calendar. Okay, great. So as I was saying earlier, the next step after we add the campaigns is to actually add the various tasks and the various content that we need to produce for each campaign and tie it to our campaign. So the next step here would be to actually flesh out our task table to understand what kind of details we need to capture about each task. So the first, I think, would be to actually highlight the due date, similar to our project. Perhaps the marketing channel that we're hoping to share this piece of content on. So we could have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and maybe also our own blog or website. We can color code it accordingly. Make sure YouTube's red, Facebook is blue, Instagram is purple, Twitter blue, and .com we can keep it as pink. And then we'll also, of course, want to make sure that we're tying it to the right campaign. And so this is really powerful because we're about to create a relationship between our task table and our campaigns table. Specifically, we're tying one single task to one campaign that it belongs to. So what we need to do is link to another record, and that's what we would call the linked record field type. We would then click campaigns when prompted with the 3 tables that we can link to. So we're making sure that we're linking to all the various campaigns that we've already outlined. And as soon as we create this field type, once I click into that field, you'll notice that the 4 campaigns that I'm allowed to choose from are the ones that I've already added in my campaigns table. So I have my launch, spring colors, sustainable materials, upcycling market. So let's say we're working on the various tasks for our market. I can go ahead and tie this campaign to this task. So now I can add the task. So for example, booking venue, confirm guests, confirm vendors. And I can go ahead and drag and drop these 3 tasks for this campaign across for all 3 of these, drag and drop this campaign for all 3 of these tasks. But then we also want to start talking about creating the actual marketing materials. So let's say we also want to create Instagram story, draft, Instagram post, draft, and of course our Facebook post, draft. I can start assigning this to the various channels that we're thinking about. And of course marking out the due dates for each one of these various tasks. So this is really powerful because in addition to just having all the details captured about your task by your campaign, you can also see this grouped by your campaign through clicking your grouping icon here. So grouping allows you to actually group all your different tasks under a specific campaign. And when you're in your campaign table, you also see all your tasks that fall under this particular upcycling market. So again, you can see all those same tasks are directly connected to your campaign now. And when you're ready to add additional tasks related to other campaigns, for example, let's say that with the sustainable materials campaign, you want to create an Instagram post, a tweet, as well as a Facebook post, you can go ahead and do that as well. And since this was due, I believe, earlier, we can keep them all due around maybe a week beforehand. And then you can continue to group by your campaign to really see all the different tasks and content that you're producing for every single one of your channels. If you're interested in checking off your tasks, as I believe Table Air's team was, you could create a checkbox field and just mark whether or not it's complete or not. Great. If you have any questions so far about what we're doing so far, again, feel free to ask questions directly in the questions tab. So one thing I want to highlight is that after you have all your information in your base, including, of course, your team table, which we'll actually walk through an example where the team table is already fleshed out, you're now ready to actually make use of your blocks platform. So what I'm going to do is actually dive into the base that I already started building out for Table Air with a lot more details captured here. And actually walk through first what we are using this base for, but then also diving into how your team can leverage blocks to really power your workflow with additional insights, reports, and overall enrich what you've already completed as a team. So what we have here, we have our campaigns table. So again, we have the various campaigns that Table Air is working on. We have the various statuses. You can also include emojis within your status. You can also then group by the status so you can quickly see at a glance where where your various campaigns are within your different stages. We also included here the various content pieces that we are using for each one of our campaigns and each one of our channels, as well as the various tasks that fall under it. So we'll dive into task first, which is linked to the task table here. Our tasks, as you can see, we have an indicator of all the different milestones that we need to complete before the project is fully completed. We have the same here for all of our projects. We also have our assignees here, which links to our team table, which you can see here, which captures details about each team member, including their email, their role, their photos, and whether or not they're a freelancer and which tasks they're working on. So this is great for ensuring that your entire team is in sync with who's working on what. And over here in our task table, it's really great because your entire team can see what's been completed and what's still active. In fact, you can even create a view that's dedicated to remaining tasks, so really focusing on where task statuses are not complete yet, so you can quickly at a glance see what the team still needs to work on. You can even group by projects and focus just on the various tasks per each project by collapsing it, or even filtering it further to highlight exactly what you're looking for. So let's say we're only focusing on the sustainable materials campaign. We can create a filter where the projects contain sustainable materials and quickly focus on just sustainable materials, remaining task. Similarly, with our campaigns table, you can create the other views as well, such as the kanban, due dates, and form. So task status, for example, we could quickly group by our status and just, again, drag and drop our task as they move along the pipeline. This is fantastic for any group meetings that you have to really capture the status of your various projects and tasks. Over here in our content table, we're keeping track of all our content for each one of our channels. So for each campaign, let's say we want to make sure that we have our different assets stored here, almost as like a digital asset management tool. What you could do is create a record dedicated to the campaign and the channel. So we have here the campaign, which links to our campaigns table, the channel, which is a single select field, as well as the actual asset for Facebook. Over here, we have a similar setup. The difference here is that we're using an email field type here, single select for our roles, and of course, an attachment field type for our photos. So now that we have all the information here, we're ready to actually use our blocks platform. Blocks include different ways of leveraging your information in a super powerful way. So you can add charts, summary blocks. You can search for your various records within your base. I've added a few here that I think have been really powerful for onboarding new team members, including the description block, which allows you to add a guide directly within your base. So you can walk your team through how to get started, walk through the workflow that your team needs to go through to complete a campaign. We also have a timeline block, which allows you to see all the various dates, start and end at a quarterly view, as well as a half-year view. And you can quickly even drag and drop the dates directly here and see those dates automatically reflect in your base as well. You can also create charts to really see your team's bandwidth. So you can see whether or not projects have been started, whether or not they're in progress, as well as who's working on them. And just to clarify how you can actually customize your block, it's always related to a specific table. So here in this block, we have a project. We have our various tasks, actually, by owner and status. So what we're doing is pulling from our task table, looking at all of our tasks, and choosing as our x-axis the task status and grouping by the task assignee. And what's resulting is this quick overview of the team bandwidth. Next, we can also create an automatic report with our information in our base, and it dynamically updates depending on what you're including in your base. So let's say that here we have a blank canvas dedicated to a table report for the various campaigns and the various tasks that fall under it. What you're seeing is that we can choose any field from our campaigns table and drag and drop it over to our canvas here, and it'll automatically update for every single event, or rather every single campaign. So let's say we're also adding our key art, and we're also adding text such as the status. Let's also add a static element here, such as the header for what the status is, and then also changing the font size, changing the font weight, and dragging and dropping it to where we need it to be. Now we can click on Next Record and see that the same layout is automatically saved for each one of our campaigns, allowing us to ensure there's always a set template for reporting, set template for presenting, automatically based on the information that our team is already entering in our base. You can then print this report or create a PDF of this report, as well as present dynamically within Airtable. Our chart block can also create pie charts, as you can see here. We have bar, line, scatter, pie, and donut, and you can easily break down the various and create the various analyses and breakdowns that you need based on the information already captured in your base. In addition to your dashboard, here you can create more dashboards. So you can create dashboard 2, for example, dashboard 3, and even create different dashboards for maybe certain teams. So let's say copywriters could use one dashboard, whereas photographers and editors could use another dashboard. Any questions so far about blocks? Great. So I think a few more things that I want to highlight is that in addition to, of course, inviting your collaborators through the share dialog here, either at the base level or the workspace level, you can also share this information with folks that need read-only access. So let's say that you only want to share the calendar view and nothing else related to your various campaigns, because perhaps you want to keep other stakeholders within your organization abreast of what other campaigns are launching on when. You can actually create a share view similar to what you're doing with a form, but specifically for your other views. You could take this URL and of course add restrictions if you have the pro plan, either with a password or an email domain, and click preview. And you'll notice that what you're showing others is just a calendar, and all the dates here are reflecting exactly what you had included in your base. If you go to April, you'll see the other events that are still pending as well. Let's say the upcycle event goes from the 23rd to the 12th instead. If I go ahead and refresh this URL, you'll notice that the 12th automatically gets updated with the event as well. Excuse me. So this is really powerful and for ensuring that other team members, other stakeholders in TableAir will also be aware of the various campaigns that are launching. So in terms of next steps, definitely go ahead and answer these questions that will help you understand what to actually include in your base and how to actually organize it so that it actually will set your team up for success and help your team to understand how a piece of content, how a campaign can go from idea all the way to reality. Definitely recommend mapping out what you're tracking, the relationships between the tracked information, so you can then go ahead and create the same linked record relationships, as well as, of course, the right field types to capture the right details. If you have any questions at all, again, feel free to use the questions tab during our session now. But then also feel free to check out support.airtable.com, airtable.com, which has a lot of answers on how to get started and the various features that Airtable also includes. We're going to end actually a little bit early, so feel free to stay on and ask additional questions, or feel free to, of course, hop off and get those 15 minutes back. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're really excited about what you're going to build with your team in Airtable.